y'all, coming to you from Jacksonville, Florida. This is GovLove, a podcast about local government brought to you by engaging local government leaders. I'm Ben Kittelson, manager at Rough Tellis and GovLove co-host. And we've got a great episode for you today. We're going to be talking about changing the form of government and what that transition is like, as well as taking on a new leadership role and switching from being an elected official to a city manager. But first, the best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGL member. Engaging local government leaders is the professional association engaging the brightest minds in local government. And registration is now open for ELGL's annual conference. Camp GovLife is coming to Santa Rosa, California, October 1st through 3rd. So whether you're a seasoned local government pro or a first-time camper, Camp GovLife is the perfect place to learn, grow, and make memories with your fellow public servants. You can go to elgl.org to sign up today. And we are celebrating 10 years of local government stories at GovLove. I'm not sure how this happened, but as part of our year-long celebration, we're opening up the GovLove hotline to our listeners, our guests, our fans. So you can call 720-282-1752 and tell us about the trends that you've seen impact local government over the last 10 years, as well as what you think local government might look like in another 10 years. So again, that number is 720-282-1752. And we'll use your message and your note on a future podcast episode. Now, let me introduce today's guests. So Deb Mohlenhoff is the city manager for the City of Ithaca, New York, a position she's been in since January 2024, when the city switched to a council manager form of government. Previously, she served as chief of staff for Ithaca and also held roles for Tompkins Cortland Community College and Ithaca College. She also served as a member of the Ithaca Common Council for 12 years, representing the 5th Ward. With that, Deb, welcome to GovLove. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to chat.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting. I'm a GovLove diehard follower, so it's amazing to be asked to be on it.
Awesome. I love when our guests are also listeners because they know, some of our our proclivities. So, as you probably know, then we like to start with a lightning round, get to know our guests a little better, let you warm up. So my first question for you, lightning round question. What was the first concert that you went to?
Right. This is embarrassing, right? So these are lightning rounds, right? It's also going to date me. So here we go. White Snake and Great White.
Oh, wow. Okay.
80s hair bands. Amazing. It also dates me. And when you say first concert, what I'm counting as that is the first one that your parents dropped you off at, right? One you went to on your own, not one you went to with your parents. So yeah, that would be White Snake and Great White in Philadelphia.
That's wow. That's gotta be a fun one. I don't know.
I don't remember a lot of it. I do remember my friend who from high school who went with me. We got dropped off, and I don't know, our parents drove around Philadelphia or something and waited and then picked us up when it was over.
That's so funny. I love that. All right. So next letter question for you. What book are you currently reading?
I'm reading this book called Ministry of Time, and it just took a crazy weird left turn. I was excited about it because it supposes that the British government discovers some way to do time travel, but then of course they create extra bureaucracy around it and create this thing called the Ministry of Time to manage the people who they go back in time from various decades and grab. So it's interesting. It's like government nerd meets sci-fi, and then they're throwing in a bunch of weird romance into it. So I recommend it. It's good. Ministry of Time.
Okay. You convinced me with government nerd / fantasy or sci-fi. So that's getting added to my to read list. All right. My next line question for you. What's your favorite lunch spot in Ithaca? Or, someone's there in town, or where should they stop?
So it's this place called CDMX Tacos. This is a fascinating success story in economic development for our city as well. It's really amazing. They used to be a food truck that hung out in the parking lot we have a giant reuse center here. And they were able to be so successful, and they applied for some grant funding, and now they are a brick and mortar restaurant, which is super exciting. And the location that they moved into was a very unique kind of property reuse. It's the old loading dock of what used to be our newspaper. I mean, we used to have a paper newspaper that got delivered. We don't anymore. And so a very wonderful local business person and entrepreneur repurposed the loading bays of this
Cool.
old newspaper building into like mini storefronts, and it's great. It's called Press Bay Alley, and we have a lot of really awesome things in there. Some restaurants, a donut shop, a bread shop, and this group graduated from a taco truck to brick and mortar. It's great. Love it.
That's so cool. Yeah, what a fascinating redevelopment. That's really cool. All right, last linear question for you. Where do you go for inspiration?
I mean, I have to say waterfalls, right? We have
Okay.
so many here in Ithaca, and I can walk to two different ones from City Hall.
Really? Oh
And
wow.
one of the just crazy things about our city is that I always say we're a small big city or a big small city, whichever way you want to say that. But we are just embedded right in the middle of, we're at the bottom of a lake. We have a bunch of different like gorge carve outs and two waterfalls. It's
Hmm.
just so nice to have that intense level of nature and like natural area so close to sort of
Yeah,
your urban core, and I just love it. We have like creek walks and gorges and waterfalls, and if you ever need just like a brain reset, just go take a walk along the creek or near a waterfall. It's incredible.
that's awesome. Right at your doorstep. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, that's a perfect transition. So, and we'll definitely talk about kind of your path to local government. But when I was thinking about the flow of our conversation, I thought it might be a good to kind of talk a little bit about Ithaca and like what that place is like, and then we'll talk about kind of the the transition from for both the city and you. But okay, so can you tell our listeners a little about Ithaca? You mentioned the natural wonders that are nearby, but what else would folks find if they visited?
Sure. So we are in upstate New York, kind of like central New York. There are varying different maps that show what upstate New York is, right?
Yeah.
We're pretty much smack in in central New York. We are technically considered part of the Finger Lakes region. There are
Mhm.
5 lakes. The city has some lovely waterfront that's situated on the very southernmost tip of Cayuga Lake, but we're kind of in that Finger Lakes region. Finger Lakes is a really known area for kind of tourism as well as wine. If you're into wine or winemaking or wine tasting, it's definitely a place to put on your vacation list, especially since CNN just named our city as the #1 place to visit for 2025.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah.
that was really exciting for us. We had a bunch of people here in town. Victor Blackwell from CNN was here doing a bunch of interviews locally. That was really cool. We have a population of about 34,000. Our government is now a city manager form of government. We have 5 wards, 2 representatives from each ward. So we have 10 total common council members and a mayor. So there are 11 elected officials that make up our local government. New York, way back when, loved to do these really fascinating layers of government.
Yeah.
So there is the city of Ithaca, which is actually the center of the donut of the town of Ithaca, which
Oh,
completely
okay.
surrounds the city. So the town of Ithaca is a totally separate municipality, but we do have some contracted shared services with them. They contract with the city for fire protection. They don't have their own fire department, and we do a couple of other things with the town. But it's often confusing that people don't even know where they live, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, which Ithaca do you live in? And they didn't even know there were 2 different ones. So that's
Which is
always
like
fun to clarify that. We have about $107 million budget. Of that, 85 million is our general fund, and the other we have kind of water and sewer and sidewalk and some other funds.
mhm.
50% of the property in our municipality is tax exempt.
Oh
I want
wow.
to say that. I messed that up. 57%
Oh my god.
of our property is tax exempt. I can give you a guess why.
I assume higher ed.
Higher ed, Cornell
Yeah.
University. The
Ah.
majority of Cornell University is in our city. Cornell provides incredible benefit and vitality, and a lot of our city wouldn't be what it is without Cornell. But
Mhm.
it is just a fascinating experiment in budget development when you
Oh, I'm
can
sure.
rely
Yeah.
on that massive chunk of your property tax. So again, for government and budget nerds, just think about if you had to eliminate 57% of your property tax. It would be
Oh,
fascinating. And let's see, something weird and quirky about Ithaca is that we are in a long-standing dispute with the city of Two Rivers as to who created the very first ice cream sundae.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We claim it as well as Two Rivers. So we continue to say that Ithaca is the home of the very first ice cream sundae. So
Perfect.
great.
Well, and we here at GovLove will side with you guys in that battle. So
Nice. Thank you. It's good. You should come. You should come for an ice cream sundae. And what's even great, the local history center just this past year started a Sunday. It's called the Sunday Showdown. So people can submit recipes for different kinds of ice cream sundaes, and then it's a
oh
massive
wow,
fundraiser where you pay an amount of money and then you go in and you kind of like a chili cook-off, but it's like a Sunday taste-off. It was great. It's
that's
amazing.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I love that.
We'll let you know when that is, and you can visit.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll time it out. Um, well, cool. Well, I appreciate the kind of like painting the picture of the both of the city and the community. So I am curious, and I know part of why I didn't ask this one first is I know your kind of path into local government's also wrapped up in some of the former government transition. But what was your kind of your entryway into local government? How did you kind of maybe end up on in the role you're on today, or at least on the path towards the role that you're in today?
Yeah, so I had kind of like, nobody ever, not many people, at least I didn't set out to be this when I grew up,
Yeah.
right? This is
Hmm.
sort of, I think I mentioned to you, I started out going to college for broadcast journalism. So I definitely took a lot of twists and turns in my
On your way.
professional career. But in terms of government, I was actually appointed by, so I'm going to think 4 mayors ago to fill a vacancy. So in the ward that I lived in, the person that was representing our ward left the position, and at the time, the way that those were replaced were the mayor just got to choose who the person was. And the reason I was a known entity to that mayor at that time was because I had been asked to serve on the city's comprehensive planning committee as the young professional representative. So you know how long ago that was, right? And by young professional, I was like, I don't know, 30 something at the time. So that was very young to the comprehensive planning committee of the city,
It's
right?
all relative, right?
I
Yeah.
know, right? It's all relative. But it actually brings up a really good point that I want to make too is if you are interested in local government in any way, a lot of people like they like race straight to the top, like I'm gonna run for office. There are so many really unique and niche volunteer opportunities all across
Mhm.
every
Yeah.
local government. Join a commission or a committee or a board or see if there's strategic planning or comprehensive planning. You will be such a better elected official if you get a baseline about like how the government works, get to know some of the staff, see how the exchanges between community members and government, like you're going to end up being a better representative, and you'll know a little bit more about how to get your platform done as an elected
Mm.
official if you get like a baseline. So my advice to I also teach our local community leadership class, and I keep trying to get some of them in there to like track a path to run for office, but I always recommend to them find your volunteer boards and commissions, probably something that you have an interest in. There's some version of committee related to it. So it's a good way to get your feet wet. And that's how the mayor knew who I was that
Yeah.
at the time, to look to me when there was a vacancy. So I was appointed, and then that vacancy became, sort of a permanent seat that was open that somebody had to run for. And I did lots of work in civic engagement and service learning in higher education. So that's really
Mhm.
where my career started, was in higher ed. One of the things that I did was organize scholar and alternative break programs in the area of service. This was right around the time of Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
I did a ton of work in bringing students down to help some of the rebuild efforts in Katrina.
Oh, cool.
And I was pretty frustrated because we kept going down, and I would bring students down multiple times. We were assigned to this woman's house, Miss Audrey's house. She's an amazing woman who was raising lots of her grandchildren in this house that was destroyed by Katrina. Each time I would bring back, like months later, like 6 months after the last student group was there, it was almost like nobody had done anything since we
Oh,
had been
wow.
there. The hammer was like in the same place we left it. The sheetrock was in the same place we left it. And I was really frustrated about this, and sat down on the stoop with Miss Audrey, and we were just talking about things, and she was also very involved in community. And she said something that really stuck with me. She said, if you really want to change the way things are in your community, you have to get a seat at the table where the decision makers are. And I said, all right, well, I can't buy a house in New Orleans, which is where I'm really frustrated with the government right about now. But I can figure out how to take that energy that I feel about improving not only your community, but ensuring that all the right voices are heard, and just serendipity intervened. And it was right around that time that this seat became vacant in my ward. And I decided to go for it. And I ended up serving. I'm currently the longest serving member in the City of Ithaca government. I served for 12 and a half years, and it was like that little chunk of time I was appointed, as well as 3 back-to-back 4-year terms. And it was great. It was incredible. I really loved that work that I did.
Oh, that's fascinating and such a cool path to becoming an elected official. So, was there something you got to work on as an elected member that made you want to stick with it and keep running for reelection?
Yeah, so many interesting things. We also had I had the honor of working with one of our mayors who was not only the youngest serving mayor at the time, but also the first city's mayor of color. And he was a young, like he was a Cornell graduate, really dynamic and very invested. And he was also kind of a self-proclaimed government nerd, as most of us are. And we worked on something right out of the gate. We served together. He was a student as a common council member, and we sat next to each other on council. And we both were really interested in how to make government work better. It was kind of a passion of ours. And so when he was selected mayor, we worked on a way to help figure out how to install more and higher quality city sidewalks and have more sidewalk repair. And we had this really terrible system at the time where essentially the only sidewalks that got repaired were the sidewalks where the neighbor got so annoyed with the other neighbor that they turned the neighbor into the city for how bad their sidewalk is. And then the city would come around and go, your sidewalk is terrible. You have
Oh,
to
wow.
fix it. And fixing it the homeowner would have to pay anywhere from, I don't know, $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000. If you were on a corner lot, you paid $5,000, $6,000, $7,000.
Wow.
And even though it's a city sidewalk, city infrastructure, it was written into the charter that that was the homeowner's responsibility. So we didn't love that, and it wasn't a great system, and it was really financially painful for people. And then if they didn't do it, it was made worse by the government. They're like, all right, fine, if you're not going to do it, we're going to come in and do it and then charge you, and then we're going to add on a whole bunch of other fees because we had to come and do it for you. So just really not an amazing system. I don't know how other cities do sidewalks. That's how we did ours at the time. So what we decided to do is to create unique sidewalk districts. They cannot be the same as the wards because then it would be considered a tax. So this is not a tax, it's a district. And every household contributes $70 a year into this district. And then each year we have a sidewalk program manager that we're actually able to pay for that position out of the sidewalk fund. And that person goes through a really public process. We just completed that a couple weeks ago here in the city, where they go kind of district by district and they ask the people who live in that district, what sidewalks are the worst? Are there any areas where we don't have any sidewalk? Do we need to put sidewalk in? What needs to be repaired? Is there sidewalk only on one side of the street? Do we want it on the other? And it's really great, like participatory government by everybody being able to come in and contribute. And then as a part of our budget process every year, there's a proposed sidewalk plan, how much money it's going to use out of each of these districts that are kind of maintained as a separate fund, and it gets approved as part of the budget process. And we have been able to like quintuple the amount of sidewalks that went in in the neighborhood, and nobody really, the homeowner is bearing that kind of annual pay-in amount that then not only guarantees them that they don't have to worry about the sidewalk in front of their house, but they're really contributing to like greater good and walkability of the entire city. And we have there's a different calculation if you're a business. There's like a foot traffic
Yeah.
calculation and some other things, but we kept that kind of single and double family homeowner at the lower end of the spectrum, so it wasn't a financial burden for everybody every year. So that was
Oh,
the
wow.
coolest project I worked on. It took us
That's
quite
awesome.
a while, spent a lot of time getting to know the city attorney
Yeah.
and making sure that what we were doing was legal and equitable and everything. It was great. So that just solidified that I had made the right choice to go into government, because I really like that, diving deep into like systems and processes and how can we improve people but make it equitable. It was great.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's got it all. I mean, funding mechanisms, budgeting, capital planning, infrastructure
Yeah.
process. I love that. That's so cool. Um, so, I want to talk obviously about the form of government change, but since you were on kind of the council in the years leading up to it, I'm curious, like, how did this kind of idea to change forms of government initially come about? Like, I know that doesn't just happen overnight, and it takes a lot of debate in a place before it even, probably even goes to an idea stage or proposal stage. So, what, thinking back on that, like, what was kind of the impetus for why Ithaca wanted to pursue changing its form of government?
So there were actually a lot of different versions of should the city do this. A lot of studies. Sometimes an outside group would come in and give a presentation. There was a pretty specific study that was done in like the 80s, and they actually recommended back then that we should switch to this. There just wasn't the political will to do it at the time.
Mhm.
Um, and then there was a group that was led, I think, by the president of our Chamber of Commerce at the time, that again got some grant funding in order to do an analysis of the government structure. One of the things that was really hard about the city is, not only was it this sort of blending of the person who's the chief, operating officer, chief financial officer of everything. It's a part-time position with part-time salary, was how
Oh,
it was kind
wow.
of written into the charter. So yes, it was a strong mayor form of government, but
But not full time.
well, it's
Weird.
not, if it wasn't a full-time, it paid like $30,000.
Oh, gosh.
And it's like, so whoever the mayor was inevitably had to have a second job to do that, or sometimes the mayor would be someone who was retired who could afford to do that. But it wasn't a person who could give the full time equivalency of doing that professional management of the multitudes of city departments and all the various city functions that would report up to the mayor.
Yeah.
And then the mayor wants to work on their platform. The mayor wants to say, these are all the things I promise people. And the mayor has to be that advocate for the city. They have to represent the city locally and regionally and sometimes federally. It was very overwhelming for one person to do that.
Yeah.
And then when we had this really dynamic younger mayor in the role, I would say the cracks in the system kind of started to show,
Hmm.
in that he was doing really good advocacy and public work, but there was just not enough bandwidth for
Yeah.
one person to do what he was trying to do for the city, which was really transformative, and then actually keep the day-to-day operations going.
Hmm.
So this chamber-led group kind of leaned into that, like what people were sort of feeling about, well, the mayor isn't present enough kind of a thing, just like a
Yeah. Yeah.
general community feeling around that. And what that allowed the city to do at the time was to create a chief of staff position. Because that was the other thing about the mayor. It's a strong mayor form of government and only had like a basic administrative assistant
Oh,
supporting
interesting. They
that
didn't have
person.
like a number two or a
Nope,
COO or
didn't
anything.
have
Okay.
anything. Nothing, not even a COO, nothing like that. So we were able to get a chief of staff position implemented. Again, served at the pleasure of the mayor, not didn't have any authority over any of the city departments, but could provide a little bit of that day-to-day stability and
Yeah.
coordination of departments. So it was almost like a baby step in the city manager direction, or like training ground for could this work if we did
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Um,
Testing the waters. Yeah.
yeah, testing the water. And it definitely worked. And I think people saw the value of having someone managing that day to day, all those complicated operations. And I think the city probably felt ready to do that.
Mhm.
So in January of 2021, the mayor at the time um, created a working group that was co-chaired by myself and the chief of staff at the time.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of public input. We drew on all of the studies that had been done before, analyzed a lot of best practices. We partnered with a public administration class from Cornell to do some additional research and analysis for us. And we would just really put this package together, and it had to go before the city. It was a citywide referendum. So
Yeah.
we had to do really comprehensive public campaign, and it had to pass through council first. Council did pass it unanimously, and it went to referendum in November of 2022, and it
Wow.
passed with 77% of the
Oh,
vote.
wow. Yeah.
So nothing passes with 77%.
No. Yeah.
These,
Especially something abstract like that or I would imagine for most people, like they're not thinking about the form of government very often.
yeah. So we took that as all right, we did the right thing. The city is ready to make this change. The residents are ready. The community is
Fascinating.
ready.
Yeah.
And we built ourselves like a 1 year runway to make the actual switch.
Yeah.
So the referendum passed in November of 2022, but the actual switch of government didn't take effect until January of 2024. So then that gave the city time to look at all of the other city functions and charter language, and they had to like write a job description for a city manager and determine what they wanted a contract to look like, and all of those moving parts and pieces. So that year to transition was a good like ramp up time. If I had to do it all over again, I would do a lot of things differently. One would be like give more time.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's pretty fast.
It was not great. Also, I don't know what we were thinking, but we're like, wow, this is really good. It's the same year as the census, which is when we also do redistricting. So
Perfect.
every single member of council, that each of those seats are going to turn over. So we're all going to come in together at the same time, and it's going to be great, and government is going to be amazing. Yeah, that was not a good not a good plan, because what it turned out is that the majority of the incumbents in those council positions decided not to run again, and so we ended up with a brand new form of government
Mhm.
and 9 brand new elected officials and a
Oh
brand new
wow.
mayor
Oh wow.
all at the same time. And conveniently, to add a little bit of spice to my first year as a city manager, we had a vacancy in our city attorney position, in our controller position, and in our HR director position.
Yeah. There's not enough change, so having those be
It was
vacant
so
too.
great. I just like, woo, yes, bring it on, all of it, right? So I would not recommend all of those things to happen all at the same time. We're getting through it. We're just kind of plugging away at things. But the other thing I would recommend is doing a more like comprehensive view of all of your legislative language, maybe even
Mm.
almost like we just announced yesterday that the mayor is going to form a charter commission. Now that we've been in it for a couple of years, we are realizing, just using find and replace to find where it says mayor in your charter and switching it to city manager. I mean, I'm joking. We did a little more intentionally than that. But I mean, honestly, that was a lot of what it was to dig comprehensively through your charter and code to see like, oh, who has the authority to make this decision? Should it still be the mayor or should it be the city manager? Like so many different there's a lot of fallout to what that looks like. And knowing what we know now, I think there are things that we would have pushed for in the referendum legislation to have things operate just a little bit differently. And so now we're going to do this charter commission. It's going to allow us to do a whole bunch of things that are probably long overdue that we've been avoiding doing because it's this small little thing. Well, it's not worth going to referendum over this small little thing. So now we'll be able to take a
Like a whole package.
package
Yeah.
of lots of much overdue legislative language change and put it in this really have a really engaged public and have a commission and do a number of different, get input and have a lot of community engagement around it. And we can, work towards that in 2026.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. Wow. Yeah. That your transition it feels like such a sprint.
It was hard. Yeah.
So what was your role during that transition time? Because I know you were on the Common Council and then you were chief of staff for a year. So when did that kind of switch to the?
So I took a break from government, or so I thought, to focus. I mean, I was in. I had always my professional career. Government was kind of like my service to my community. It was not my full-time job. And I had been in higher ed for a really long time. I had just gotten a significant amount of tasks added to my plate at the community college that I worked at, and was really loving that job. I was loving our new president. A lot about what was going on was great. And then so I decided I need to lean into this big job that I've just been given, this responsibility that I have at the community college. It's time. 12 and a half years is a long time. I'm ready to give up the seat. So I kind of took a break, didn't run again, was not involved really in government at all. And again, if you're a believer in the things happen for a reason, that was the year of the pandemic.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
As you know, colleges were impacted pretty significantly about how we operated during the pandemic. And because I was sort of in that community relations role as, at the leadership level of that college, I took the majority of the COVID planning for our institution. So it was good timing. But that was hard work, really stressful. It's the reason why I know I can tackle anything that gets chucked in the city manager role, because literally being responsible for the lives of students and faculty and staff is a lot of weight. It causes a lot of anxiety, and I think some people in higher ed just like needed something to switch. So that was kind of weighing on me. I wasn't necessarily looking to take a new job. I absolutely love our community college, and community colleges all across the country are incredible places, and we should support them as much as we can. But there was kind of a shakeup at the city level in where that mayor that I've been talking about that I served with for a long time, he left in the middle of his term. And kind of in the middle of a lot of things that were going in the middle of the pandemic and in the middle of a lot of stuff that was happening. And so the person who ended up filling the rest of his term was sort of asked me, please come back. We need your help, right? So someone who was pretty familiar with government, I chaired the city's budget process, I was chair of the city administration committee, knew most of the staff, and so she asked if I would return to the city in the chief of staff role. So that's what I did, and was in that chief of staff role during that ramp up time to city manager, and then decided to throw my hat in the ring for the role.
Yeah.
Just seeing this like impending wall of chaos headed towards the city, I thought I would bring to the role some of the stability that was the purpose for creating the role in the first place, to really stabilize the day-to-day operations of the city. And the search committee agreed, and here I am I sit in the seat today.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, yeah, that's quite the training ground for being a city manager.
Yeah.
So I guess before we talk about kind of taking on that role and learning on the job. That kind of year transition when you were kind of in the chief of staff role, like, can you talk more about that? Like, what is it like working with staff to kind of figure out what, how are things going to work now in this new form of government? What was it like working with the elected officials as they're like, seeing on the horizon that, this may all turn over, it'll be all new people, like, but we still need to kind of set up our city for success. Like, that period just seems so fascinating to me. And especially since you guys are on such a sprint that, like, I can't imagine what it was like to try and, check all the boxes, close all the loops, like get as prepared as you can, knowing that you're gonna learn into the structure and learn as you guys have gone. But I'm just curious about that specific kind of sprint, if there's anything more that you want to share about it.
Yeah, I have used the phrase building the plane while we're flying it more than I ever care to use that phrase in my life. It was an exercise in patience and flexibility and adaptability. It was really a lot. And some of it, what we did bring in an outside consultant to manage just sort of the development of the actual role, like the job description, what a contract would look like, the terms of the contract. So I think that in our heads on paper, when it passed referendum, we thought that would be the easiest part of the transition. That turned up to be the hardest part of the transition.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Getting council to come to consensus on what should the terms of the contract be? What should it look like? What's the selection process? All of those pieces. And fortunately / unfortunately, because I decided to run for the role, I wanted to maintain an incredibly high level of integrity. And so as chief of staff, I removed myself from that process.
Oh, interesting.
Because I was like, no, I'm not going to be a candidate for a job that I helped write
design.
For, right? This didn't set right with anyone. And so I don't know if anybody else would be in that unique position, but it certainly created a position where it might have made sense for the person who was in the chief of staff to do a little bit more of that work, because that was the closest equivalent role to city manager at the time. But so bringing in that outside consultant was really critical and helpful. And we probably could have taken advantage of some outside assistance and support in a number of other ways had we known that just the basic development of the job description was going to be that long of a process. But it's fine that it was long. It meant that but by the end, everybody was really all in on making this change, and it allowed them to have a really robust and thorough search process. And there was a lot of public engagement in the development of the job description. So long wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It's just that we did build such a short time frame for that, and there was absolutely no buffer room if something took longer than you anticipated.
Yeah.
And so because that took so long, it kind of smushed up when the search process could be.
Oh, interesting.
And some of the other nuts and bolts of how it would work day to day weren't necessarily ironed out.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how a person unfamiliar with how the city operated could have remotely been able to function in the role coming in with everything being so new. So I'm thankful that I was selected. It probably went a lot smoother just because of my familiarity with the city and how it operated. So I don't know, being the first city manager is a big thing.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a lot.
Well, it sounds like because the transition is so tight, and rightfully the council and the organization spent a lot of time on the role of the city manager, what that should look like. Like, it meant that the plane, to use your analogy, wasn't quite as built out as maybe you would hope on your first day.
Right.
So when you kind of come in at the beginning of this new structure, beginning of 2024, like, what are the things that are on your list of hey, I need to start setting these things up. This is what needs to we need to understand how these things need to work. And what are the kind of system structures, even internal processes. I always think about how does the agenda management all of a sudden need to change, or budget development? Like, how do you start getting a handle on some of those kind of things as you are navigating this totally new role, and
Right.
like you said, building the plane as you're flying it?
Well, I'll use another transportation analogy. How about that, right? So like
Perfect. Yeah.
here's what it felt like. It felt like um someone was finally looking under the hood of like a 67 Mustang that's been like sitting in someone's garage and it's kind of dusty, and you realize there are like a million parts that need to be cleaned or replaced, or there was a lot of work that was going to need to be put into this beautiful classic car in order to restore it to full functionality and efficiency. Like that is what um, I didn't. Yes, I was an elected official, and yes, I ran the elected side of budget and city administration and got to know a lot of staff, but I was never embedded. And even as chief of staff, I wasn't as embedded
Yeah.
in the day to day that was going on. Here are some things that I learned. We still process our city's payroll using pens and paper.
Oh yeah.
It is all manual. Everyone writes their hours down, and then papers get passed around and people sign them, and then they pass those papers to other papers, and then they get passed to the payroll. I was like, what is happening? Right, there's that. The city budget, I had to put the very first budget together from a city manager perspective. Departments submitted their budgets on paper, or how
Sure.
in
Yeah.
whatever version they wanted. Some used Excel, some used PowerPoint, some used Microsoft Word, some wrote me a memo, and so then I just ended up with 14 different department budgets submitted to me in paper that then were manually entered into Excel spreadsheets. Then those
Wow.
Excel spreadsheets were manually entered into an Access database to make the budget book look pretty. And then when the budget was passed, it was then manually entered into Munis, our financial system.
Wow.
So I was like, oof, there's a lot of work to do here, right? And when you have someone who was very effective at being a charismatic advocate for the city, really wonderful public face of the city, but wasn't paying attention to that stuff under the hood that was making
Yeah.
government work, it showed. And when you had like a decade of that, and if this is not in any way saying that anyone who was a mayor of this city was not ever bringing them their full selves to that role. Like it is a tough job, and they were working really hard at it. But to intentionally switch and to give someone, to empower a person to be in the role of ensuring that your taxpayer dollars are being used the most effectively and efficiently and invested wisely, and staff is feeling supported and they have the resources that they need, and we are looking at long-term planning and good investments in capital planning, like we're going to see the reward of this in a few years, right? It's going to
Yeah.
take a
Yeah.
while, but I can see day to day. And the one thing that also kind of surprised me, and you heard me talk about the overwhelming volume of change that was just happening all at
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
time, the hardest part of change and change management is usually resistance from people, right?
Hmm.
This staff was not resistant to this change at all.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah.
They were like, "Oh,
They're
thank
hungry
God."
for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe one at we I convened what I call the city leadership team, which is essentially all of the department heads, and created agendas for meetings and talked to them and got advice and guidance on big decisions the city had to make, really starting to unify what had been like very separate silos kind of operating on
Interesting.
their own independently, because there was that void in leadership at the top, where unity of us working together as a functional government where we are all part of the same system, right, instead of
Mm-hmm.
being a bunch of different systems. So like the second meeting we convened with sort of, my style is very different. One of our department heads said, thank God there's finally an adult in the room, right? Like, he meant it as a joke, but it was like, woof, we're finally. So like building that team is so critical to a city manager, whether you're the first, second, third, 10th, because one of the things about being in the city manager role is you cannot be an expert in the multitudes of different functions that report up to you. You've got
Yeah, for
fire
sure.
and police and wastewater and community centers and recreation and parks and finance and HR. Like,
Hmm.
you can have little dribs and drabs of those things. You can know enough about those things, but you're never going to know all of them. And so you need a highly functional team of people that you can pull in when you need to make those big decisions. The distinction in our city's situation was that someone was finally sitting in that seat being willing to make those decisions,
Mm.
right? Not like a dictator,
Yeah, yeah,
like a person who is doing their very best to bring everyone together and make the best decision for the city with the right level of input, but a decision was being made.
yeah,
And that was like the significant impact, I think, for our staff. It was like, great, finally someone we can go to. I can go to the city manager. I can say, these are all of the things. What do you think? Can you help?
yeah,
And they could get an
yeah,
answer and get direction and get guidance and really feel like they're part of the bigger system. So,
yeah. Well, yeah, you're exactly right. I think it's so fun to think about these transitions and learn from folks like you that have kind of gone through them, because I mean, rightfully so, a mayor or elected official is more externally focused. Like that's who they're responsible to. That's kind of their perspective and their day to day. But they need someone, a city manager type role or whatever it looks like, to like be that convener internally to make sure, hey, all the departments are marching in the same direction, that we're not submitting budgets in PowerPoint and Excel and a PDF probably, and and so having some like unified process and coordination, like that takes work. And it's not that the external facing elected official work isn't important, it's that internal like development, like administrative work is just as important and like needs to be paid attention to. And so it's a fascinating story to hear. People like are almost hungry for it when you're coming in the door.
yeah. Yeah, it's been a ride, but it's been an enjoyable one so far.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So there's obviously some of the leadership within the organization was like kind of, I'll put words in your mouth, hungry for this kind of change and more day-to-day management. I'm curious how you talk to like kind of frontline staff or other folks in the organization about what the changes might mean. And then also, on the other kind of side of the coin, like this is a ton of change and change management. Like how did this get communicated to the public too? Like both like as you're kind of building the plane as you're flying it, and probably as you're considering changes to the charter and all that stuff in the future. Like how are you guys thinking about both the internal communication to frontline employees and kind of employees at every level to, and external, like making sure the public knows what's going on, and kind of all these big changes that are happening.
Sure. So, internally, I think I decided, I mean, in addition to what is just very good practice of any city manager is getting out to your
Yeah.
various fire departments and police stations and water plants and rec centers. You gotta get out. You have to do that. Make sure you're taking tours of facilities and seeing people in the day to day. We have a lot of staff that are great about letting you do a ride along in a
Mm-hmm.
snowplow or a garbage truck or those kinds of things. That's important. But I also wanted to make sure one of the things that had been sort of pervasive about City Hall was that it was not accessible or a welcome place for
Mm.
people to be. Not the public didn't feel that way so much, but the staff kind of felt that way, like, oh, that's City Hall. I don't belong there, kind of a thing. And I don't know that
Interesting.
anybody did anything intentionally. It was just sort of how it evolved. And I wanted to make sure that the city manager's office and City Hall was a place that every single employee of the city felt like they could come in at any time and get the support that they needed, or that someone would listen to them, and that I wanted this kind of open door policy. So I started this fun thing that we do. It's called the lunch lottery.
Mm.
And I send out an email to all staff at the beginning of, every few months. We remind people, and we do this super fun online randomizer thing. It's like this big wheel that you spin. And so anybody that says, yes, put me in the lunch lottery, goes in, and we spin every month. And 5 employees are chosen at random, and I invite them into my office, and I buy pizza, not with taxpayer dollars, my own
Yeah.
dollar, for everybody. And it's just an opportunity to bring the most random people who work for the city together in one
Oh, fun.
place.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we have lunch together, and we always talk about, the topic of the day. I have them ask questions. I explain this city manager form of government. This is what it means. This is why it's different from when the mayor is here. These are kind of my goals in sitting in this seat. And so we could have like someone who works with garbage collection, a police officer, a rec coordinator, and someone who works in planning and zoning, and like the city clerk at lunch,
Yeah.
right? It's great. Everybody loves it so much. And then at the end of every lunch, we take a selfie and I send it out to all users. It's our all users is our all city email, and say, here's a picture of everybody. These are all the things we talked about. And oh, hey, if you haven't gotten in the lunch lottery yet, here's how to sign up for future ones. It is so simple. It's not expensive. It's trying to demonstrate to people that you are all important, you're all valued, and you have the ability to make suggestions directly to the city manager. And oh, by the way, look at all of these other wonderful jobs that exist in the
Yeah.
city, things that people do, and I can clear up some things that filter out there onto the rumor mill. People can, we sort of do this like fact check thing where it's like, hey, I heard this on the street, or I read this
Yeah.
on Facebook. Is that really what the city is doing? It's been wonderful, and I'm definitely going to continue that. And it's a simple practice that if other people are looking for ways to have a different kind of engagement with their employees, that's a way to go.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then external facing, I have not cracked that nut yet. We do not. We are doing the best that we possibly can
Mhm.
without any formal position dedicated to public information or communications.
Yeah, yeah.
So, when you had a mayor who was the face and the voice of the city, that person kind of did that themselves.
Interesting.
And so there
Yeah.
wasn't ever really this administrative push or a need to have like a communications director, or we do have like a public information specialist, but that person has up until now been used as like, here, this is what I need changed on the city website kind of a thing. So much more of
Uh,
like an internal support function role. So we're working on that.
yeah.
I'm trying to make some changes to departments, bringing some technology online to help us make it easier to communicate with the public, trying to be a lot more transparent. We just migrated our budget process to OpenGov. They've been really great to work with. This is not a shameless plug. They've just been really helpful to us, allowing us to be a little bit more transparent with the budget process. So, we have work to do in that area, but
Yeah.
the public is hungry for it. And it is the right time to try to figure out how to invest in outward facing communication, because you're combating so much misinformation day in and day out. And we need a way to say, this is the voice of the city. These are the facts of the city, and support our elected officials that are also really trying to get good information to their constituents.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's probably a great example of how you're building the plane as you fly it, right? Where you got
Yeah,
to get some of these structures and positions in place that maybe weren't as necessary in a different form of government or with a different structure. So
right, right.
that's yeah, interesting. So before we start wrapping up, I'm curious. There's not very many city managers that started as elected officials and step into this kind of chair. So I'm as you kind of reflect on your time in this role and kind of how you've been kind of navigating it. How do you think your experience as an elected official informs how you approach the work of a city manager, and like how does that kind of impact the way you do this role?
I think what's really helpful is to know the pressures of what it feels like to have to listen to all of the people that are asking for things from you, from the
Mm,
public. Like that constituent relations is really the hardest part of being an elected official. And everybody who's in that role wants to serve the people that are like, you're just constantly barraging them with things the
yeah.
best that they possibly can. So, knowing that I also wanted to be that kind of elected official, I knew exactly where the city's deficiencies were
Mm,
in my ability as an elected official to serve. Like, one of the things, I'm sure every single city can talk about potholes, right? Like that's the
hmm.
thing. That's everybody wants to know when the pothole's going to be fixed or when their street's going to be paved or whatever. So knowing that now that I have again looked under the hood of like, oh gosh, now I understand why we are really bad at getting this information. It's not that our public works staff doesn't do this incredible job trying to figure out like when's the utility company coming in and ripping up a street, and which water main broke that needs to be repaired, and what sidewalks be the quadratic equation. It's like those murder boards with all the strings, right? Like that's how we figure out what streets are going to be paved. But we are terrible at figuring out how to communicate that to the public, right? So like they lose a little bit of trust because we're not very transparent about it. And so now being on the other side of that, I know the pressure that those elected officials are feeling and wanting to at least provide the why behind some of the decisions that their government has made and why their tax dollars are spent that way. And so I'm really kind of fine tuning on those early quick wins, like putting the pieces in place to make sure that if nothing else, our elected officials know what's going on, they know why we're making decisions. And I'm really tackling, I think, kind of transparency and efficiency and process improvement as the first thing that I'm doing, knowing what those people that stepped up to serve in those elected official roles are kind of trying to manage and triage day to day themselves.
Yeah, no, it gives you good perspective and probably helps. I would imagine you relate to them as they're dealing with all this change too, and help make sure that their needs are met in a different way than maybe someone that just has an admin background.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would. Interesting. Very cool. Well, awesome. Well, Deb, I know we're a little over time, but I thought this has been fascinating. So I have, my hardest question for you. So if you could be the GovLove DJ and pick the exit music for this episode, what song would you pick?
I think I would pick Got Love by the Revivalists. Awesome. Mostly because I love that band. They're from New Orleans. They're really great. And everyone should love their government, right? Like I'm really trying to bring back GovLove, right? I just kind of was talking about how it's a crazy world, it's crazy times, and everyone is doing their best in order to figure out what democracy means to them and how they are engaging and participating in democracy. It was so amazing at our last council meeting. We had a woman come. We've been having some issues with some people experiencing homelessness in the city, kind of taking over some areas of one of our city parks. And she came, and when she started her public comment, I was like, oh no, where is this going? And it was an amazing compliment, acknowledging that our police, our public works, our encampment responders, the way that they handled and managed this person who is clearly in distress was wonderful. And so it is so rare that somebody comes to public comment and say, I see you. I see all of your employees. I see how hard they're working, and I see the difference that they made for this person. So we need to lean into the love of GovLove and love our local government a little bit more. So that's why I chose Got Love from the Revivalists.
Perfect. Awesome. I love that. As one of the co-hosts of GovLove, so of course I do. That's awesome. Well, that ends our episode for today. Deb, again, thank you so much for taking your time to chat with me and talk about all the things going on in Ithaca and your transition personally and the formal government. This has been fascinating, so I really appreciate it.
Great.
And for our listeners, and for our listeners, GovLove is brought to you by engaging local government leaders. The best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGL member. You can reach us online at elgl.org/GovLove or at our page on LinkedIn. And as a reminder, you can register for ELGL's annual conference, October 1st through 3rd in Santa Rosa, California. Registration is available at elgl.org. And lastly, subscribe to GovLove on your favorite podcast app. And if you're already subscribed, help us celebrate 10 years of GovLove being the go-to place for local government stories by calling in at our hotline, 720-282-1752. Tell us about the trends that you've seen impact your organization over the last 10 years and what you think local government might look like in the next 10 years. And with that, thank you for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.
Wake up in the morning, full of rain. She dancing to the room like a hurricane. Oh, why? Just a little thing she do. Sweating to the light.